If your response to somebody is, I'm on my way, where are you?
Probably hadn't gotten in the car yet.
There you go. What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Black Student Success Podcast, where we bring you insight and guidance from successful Black professionals. This is brought to you by InQuire Hire. My name is InQuire, and as always, we appreciate the support. So today's guest has over 8 years of experience as a TV anchor, so it's going to be cool to get to know how he got his foot in the door, how he, uses his skill sets on camera, and then what happens off camera, within his work. And then I also want to give him an opportunity to highlight some of the things that he does outside of the news station, and talk about how he gives back to the community. So let's welcome Colin Mayfield to the show. How you doing today, Colin?
Great, Selvin. Thanks for having me, man. It's been a while since we've had a conversation, but I appreciate you roping me back in, man.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. So let's start off how we always start off the show by asking, who is Colin Mayfield?
Well, that's a very loaded question. But for me, I think it's a real simple answer. I try to be genuine, try to live my type of morality and ethics that I've kind of learned and gathered over the last couple of years. I'm a Christian man, father of two, and aspiring husband to be. So I guess that in a nutshell, that's me.
Perfect. All right. So let's kind of go back to the beginning, kind of where it all started. So I want to see if there are any parts of your upbringing that, inspired you to get into TV and what that looked like.
Yeah, well, I actually, in high school, I went to a really small school. I was raised in northern Wisconsin for my adult life. I came from Texas. Prior to that, I was raised in my younger life, or my childhood, in Texas. So it was two different environments, but I was able to kind of acclimate myself. And the reason why we made that move, really just to give you some background, was my dad was in politics, and he kind of understood the way education worked. Texas at that time didn't have a good education system, so we went to Wisconsin. So based on that education that I was able to get and my dad kind of focused on, he gave me a number of ideas. Hey, listen, do an internship in your high school years. I know it's awkward, it's weird. Other people are doing co-ops, things like that. But I was more thinking about college and career readiness. And so I did a couple of different avenues. I went to shadow an orthodontist and a dentist, a cardiologist. I was heavily into in the medical side of things. And then I went to a radio station, a TV station, and a couple other places. And based off those experiences, to me, I came away with TV being a medium that I felt like I could actually express myself in. And be genuine with. And so I didn't know it at the time that was something that was particularly important to me. But I think over time, that was something that kind of stood out in my mind. And that's what brought me back to that experience in my college years, to shift from medical and business to finally communications, to settle on that, because I feel like I'm a good communicator. I communicate well with humans when I do. And so for me, that was just where it fit. And I tried other avenues, and nothing really clicked for me. So I think that was a finite moment, I think, looking back, that helped me kind of shape, my path of where I wanted to go.
Perfect. And when you were kind of going through those different opportunities, and and maybe you ran into kind of both sides of the the broadcast realm when it comes to radio and TV. Now, what were those experiences like, and what was that deciding factor that was, TV, I think, is the way for me to go?
Yeah, I'm very different. I kind of looked at, when I was going through school, everybody was talking about getting a job when you leave, getting a job when you leave college. And so I looked at kind of the salary for both. I looked at the opportunity that I might have in both. And obviously it came down to, really, I was coached by a couple people who said, listen, if you have an opportunity to look good, and we feel like you do, and you sound good, you should try television. And so for me, I just thought it was a better route to go. I didn't really see a career for me in radio. Not that it's a dead end. place at all. And I think kids should be encouraged if that's something they do want to still do. It's kind of like a lost art now. But that was my motivation, was to go towards news. Like I said, I felt like I had the opportunity, and personally, I was told that there was a competitive advantage about being a Black man in media and being on television. If I could make that work, that was going to stand out for me. So I went with that route.
Perfect. And we're going to kind of get into that a little bit more too. Now,
Yeah.
now let's talk about that experience. Once you actually got onto campus, that's kind of where we crossed paths. What was that like with the different resources that were made available to you, having those opportunities to hone those skills? Talk about what that was like.
Yeah, I think looking back, I was not as involved as I should have been at Marquette, and that goes back to me being just more invested than I should have been. So that's kind of some advice for kids that are going to watch this. No matter, even if you're not going to go to Marquette, you're going to go to another Jesuit university or another university around the nation. I think being involved intricately is something that you have to, right, to make connections. And those things were there. Marquette obviously provided a great education, but they also provided kind of a you do it yourself type of way, right? Or when you're ready to do it. They didn't force anything on you. And honestly, for some reason, I took a lot of specific courses on broadcasting and electronic communication early on in my college career, just to figure out if that was something that I liked. And I think I got involved more early on and then started to fall away at the end because I transitioned into more internships, got away from Marquette in some sense. But I think that the plan that they allowed me to pursue ultimately helped me end up where I'm at. And I think, if you don't force kids, you give them the critical information that they need to make the critical thought process to go through that and to make the right decision. I think it only enables and helps students come of their own. And so, like I said, I maybe should have been more involved, but maybe if I had been, I would have been burnt out and never been on television. I also was in the Stratton School of Business. So at the same time, I was trying to focus on two different things. And, being a college student, I had a whole lot of fun. So I think, looking back again too, being focused on what you're there to do and realigning yourself. Marquette gave me an opportunity to really do that every semester and every year. So I was able to just, do as I needed to, so.
Yeah. Definitely. And it's a balance that you kind of need to have with that when it comes to being able to present those different opportunities and resources and, having that push on the other side. So fortunately, it sounds like you were on the good side of that even without having that push, you still felt like you had the good amount of access to those different things for you to kind of explore. Right. But at the same time, not lose that motivation. Even though you didn't do as many of those resources on campus, you were doing things off campus. So right. it was really kind of a stepping stone for you to get a little bit closer to that workspace.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect.
Well, and I knew not to cut you off.
Yeah.
Shifting right from college to career. I guess I was forward thinking and trying to make connections even before I left the building, Marquette. And I think I tried to do that, maybe not too early, but a little bit earlier in my college career. And then when senior year came around, people were like, well, I thought you were graduating 2 years ago, because I had been so up on them. So I think every student will go as they need to. But again, I was thankful that I wasn't pushed because, I think that sometimes can lead to burnout too, so.
Absolutely. Perfect. Now, when you're kind of thinking about, what that work environment was going to look like, now, did you have your eyes on a particular station? Were you kind of open to working anywhere? What was that mindset as you were closing out that senior year?
Yeah, I wanted to go anywhere but Milwaukee, honestly, or Wisconsin. I wanted to get out of the cold. I felt like I knew the area of Milwaukee, the issues they were dealing with, the metropolitan area. And obviously I didn't understand what I know now, obviously being in media almost a decade. But I think for me, it was about getting off campus, not going back home, because that was the thing at that time in 2012, 2011, people were, I can't find a job. So a lot of students were going back home to live with mom and dad to either find a job or work and live at home. So it was very challenging for me because, you have your freedom and you're about to graduate and you're expecting to get a job, move to another city. And for me, that just wasn't the case. I mean, and especially for media and for TV, you have to go where the jobs are. And people will understand what I know or what I'm saying about that when they get into it, because, you're not going to start in Cincinnati. I had the foolishness to believe that I was going to leave Marquette University and start in Austin, Texas. I mean, my best friend had just taken me to Austin, played ball at Marquette, and I was from Texas, but I wanted to be in Austin so bad, and I never heard back. Sent my resume film, sent a resume, never heard a thing. And a couple of places, got bites here and there, but it wasn't anything big, and it was demoralizing. Thankfully, though, based on my internships, going back home and summer jobs, going back to that same station that I interned at, I went back, and they said, we would love to have you. We've known how you work. You've been here for years. We want you to be a reporter. And they even added an anchor position for me on the weekends because, again, I'd been in that shop. They understood me, and I understood the culture that they were trying to build there. So it really worked out great. But going back, if you had asked me on graduation day if I was happy to go back home, I would have said, heck no. And even stronger words than that, because I was devastated, but sometimes, we look at certain challenges as step backs, and honestly, that was a launching pad for me. My parents provided a shelter for me for a year and a half. I was able to stack some money, pay on my loans. Wasn't a lot, but the first job was $20,000. So, you're happy to have that, but you're also challenged in dealing with life coming at you. And I think as a college student, I wasn't as ready for that effect to happen as I was to take on the college and the career that I was in. So
yeah, well, it's good that you kept those options open, and
yeah.
And, like you said, the networking that you did before you, left the campus, I think was valuable in the sense where you're keeping those bridges intact. And, when your primary plans or whatever that was, it sounds like Texas was part of that, kind of fell through. You still had something to fall back on, even though it wasn't the most desirable option at the time. It was still something that you could still build upon, and maybe that would have led to you ending back up in Texas at some point. But
yeah.
So I think
in a year and a half after that, I was already at a market size bigger than Texas. You know what I mean? So it's just about biding your time, really being patient. And, I know the younger generation's patience is not something, that they really, I guess, maybe hold as a virtue, maybe, or, I see a lot of progressive young people. And I think that's amazing. But sometimes in careers, you have to take time for things to blossom. And I would not have been ready to leave Marquette and go to Texas. I probably would have gone right back home anyway. So who knows?
Yeah. Well, it all worked out, and, you're obviously still growing as a professional. So that's really cool to hear. So I know that you talked about kind of like additional steps that you took, beyond the classes. You had a certain level of involvement with your, outside of, the courses with, different organizations and things on campus. You did things off campus as well when it came to internships. Now, can you talk about the balance that you had to try to create, especially with those latter years where you're now working off campus, but still trying to, keep your experiences high as a college student, still go through your classes? What was that balance and time management like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I was an athlete before I came to college. And so I think it helped me when I had rigorous coursework in high school to learn how best to study and what ways I learned best. Was memorizing something, or can I just open a book and read a chapter and retain all that information? So a lot of that, thankfully, was done ahead of time. I kind of knew, because my parents were so focused on education, how that worked. but I did have trouble with the coursework loads that I got. And honestly, one of the first classes that I got a C in that I was so upset about was a psychology. At Marquette, it was so hard for me. And I don't remember the name of the professor that I had, but she was grueling. And we would read, I think, like 100 pages every other day, because, not classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever. But I had to acclimate towards that. I had to acclimate towards these new course loads. And you can't just be in the library for an hour a day, or you have to almost do an hour of studying for almost every hour of classwork. I mean, the equivalent is, as we've read, and for other things, it's going to take more than that. For my supply and chain management course, which in business I wasn't great at. I had to go in for extra help in accounting. I mean, you have to do whatever you have to do. But I think in today's day and age, students, when they do go to college, they have a sense of where they need to be, where their effort, their threshold, either goes over and you get burnt out, or goes too low and you just don't care about stuff. And I think, finding that balance, like you said, is hard, but it can be made easier by going into office hours. If you're having a struggle with a certain lesson, do some extra work then, because on the back end, you'll be happy that you did it. You won't have to take that extra time when you're going back to study. Say, oh, well, what's this part that I didn't understand, and now you have to go back and figure it out. So yeah, I think balance is a huge part of college life and life in general. But I think you just learn by doing it, and by finding your weaknesses and strengths, and other stuff that you don't necessarily need to study a lot. Broadcasting, some of my classes, it really wasn't about studying. It was about just applying the application of what you've learned. So sometimes, you're not going to need that, but I think learning yourself and knowing your limits is probably the biggest thing. And in college, obviously I didn't know entirely where I was at with that. But I think it did help when I had a couple subjects that I was not doing well in to go back and say, hey, listen, I can take the time from calculus or whatever and go back and do some psychology work. So it is a balancing act, but that's life. I mean, as parents, as fathers, we both know that, not only do we have to be a man of the household and clean and do the laundry and work and take care of the kids, but we also have to be as good as we are inside the house as we are on the outside too. So it just continues, so.
Absolutely. And to add to that, I would say, finding that help early on, I think is something that would also be beneficial, to
Yes.
not be in denial of, what type of progress that you are, having and the progress that you're trying to get to, catch that and try to nip it, early on, I think is really, really good. And sometimes for those who may have not needed help, with anything else beforehand, that might be a little bit more difficult for them. But, high school and college are two different ball games, so it's, it's great to have that opportunity to humble yourself early on, before that kind of snowballs into something else. Cause, each semester kind of progresses, it progresses in its own speed, and, you want to be able to keep up and maintain. So, so thanks for explaining that. Now you have, you've worked in the markets in Wisconsin. You're now working in the Cincinnati area, as an anchor, a reporter, and, everything in between. Kind of talk about what your typical day looks like, especially if you are doing, daytime versus if you're doing evening. I'm not sure what your experience is, but can you talk to that?
Yeah. I worked at Market 137, Wausau. I went from Wausau to Louisville, which is in the top 50 markets, was there for 3.5 years. And the company that I'm still with that owned the company, or that owned the station in Louisville, moved me up from Louisville to Cincinnati, just kind of regional thing. But at that time, it was a big move for me, obviously, because of being a younger morning anchor. Wasn't necessarily something that you see across America. And I think at that time in 2017, I was one of the youngest morning one of the youngest anchors on television in a major city. So it was a huge thing for me. I'm trying to get back to what you were saying about the different daytimes. This is kind of where I'm going with that. But I was a morning anchor there in Louisville. Still a morning anchor here. I did dayside there as well. I have not done nightside, so I'll start with that. A nightside reporter anchor usually comes in around 2:30. They'll run the entire nightside shift until 11:30, and that'll cover the gamut from 5 and 6 o'clock news. Some stations have a 5:30 too. We call it the 90 show. So from 5 to 6:30, there's news. Those nighttime people would be on there for that. Then they do a 10 and 11 o'clock show, right? So normally you're gathering information, you've got contacts, you're enterprising a story. And just for instance, I was calling earlier on, I'm a part of this COVID-19 vaccine for Moderna here in Cincinnati. And so I called Dr. Fichtenbaum, who's a lead investigator on this, just to ask him some questions about where Moderna lies, what they thought about potential vaccines being rolled out, and the fact that 90% of people really don't feel like they are going to get vaccinated because they're worried about, so things like that, right? So a lot of times in every shift, though, you're going to call right off the top, try and get some information on that topic, try and set up some interviews, and get that shot written and edited within at least 2 to 3 hours so that you have it and that you can air it, right? And so at night, you got to think if you're starting at 2:30, by about 4:30, you got to be done, so you don't have a lot of time to get in, get your show or get your story and put it on the air. For anchors, it's much different. You're coming in, you're reading the scripts, you're changing things. Maybe you're talking to producers about, hey, let's transition into this story from COVID to stimulus checks a little better, or hey, the numbers on the COVID 11,000 are wrong. So specifically for me, I get up at 3 every morning. Been that way for 6 years now. I anchor a show from 4:30 until 7 Monday through Friday. So I'm looking through the 4:30 script. My other anchor goes to the 5 a.m. We vice versa. We go back and forth and look through stuff, make sure things are correct. And then I try to come in the maker room here, where I'm at now, which is the only quiet place really around this area, to just kind of get ready, look at some more scripts, and then at 4:30 I'm on set until 7. After that, we've got cut-ins here and this is an NBC station. So today's show, they have cut-ins from 7 until 9. So they'll toss to us from New York, and we'll do some news coverage from there on out. Really about a minute and a half, nothing longer than that. After that, at 9, there's an editorial meeting that runs for about an hour. And people in the news business know what editorial meetings are. It's not fun. It's not a gnashing of teeth, but it's not fun. And then people go off on their assignments and they get it done. And so by that time it's 10:30. So for me, if I don't have an assignment at that time, calling or maybe setting up a Zoom interview, I'll run through the scripts and get ready for the noon show. And then I'm out around 12:30. So it's a long day, but it's a blessing to have this shift, because honestly, once I leave at 12:30, I've got an entire day. Yes, I'm tired. Most days I do lift and work out. Since the pandemic has started, I have been awful at that. And I think probably a lot of people are in the same boat. So I'm not trying to beat myself up over that. But that's one way that I can kick my energy level back up, get ready for the next day. But yeah, that's kind of a day. It's not real exciting unless we have breaking news, or, during the presidential election, we had stuff happening all the time. So lately it's been a little bit more quiet, which is good, because it's been just a crazy year, obviously, for everybody. So
yeah. Well, thanks for going over that. I think for someone who's not in the business, it does sound like a very fast-paced type of environment. And maybe you get used to it. You can kind of see the ebbs and flows, especially when it comes to different seasons of the year, in terms of the amount of coverage that's happening. I'm sure with the election having just happened, there was a lot more that was going on at the time. But yeah, it's cool to kind of see, okay, this is when your day starts. This is actually the time that you're on air, and then all the other spaces in between, you're still kind of doing work and not just kind of, chilling in the green room or doing whatever, So
Right.
it's good to see that you're always kind of moving and you're always, preparing for the next
Yeah.
segment or the next day. And it's just a continuous thing. So
Yeah.
did it take you some time to kind of get used to that, especially kind of looking at the differences between the anchor roles and the reporter roles?
Oh yeah. I'm fascinated by Formula One. Lewis Hamilton, one of the only black drivers in Formula One. I was listening to him the other day talk about he's been driving since, he's 35 now. He's been driving since he was 6, 7. You got to think some of these people have been doing what they're doing now for 20 years, and we're just starting to be professionals now, 8 to 10 years. I mean, there's that one saying, it takes 10,000 hours to be a pro at anything. And that is inherently true, especially about this. And I think about anything because there's so many small, minute details that make you great at your job that you need to be in tune with, for me, it's not having the same ad lib come up in a 2.5 hour show, something fresh and new, or, saying thank you in a different way to my reporters so that my viewers think that it's something different, that I'm engaged. And so you have to look at those things and try to work that into, what you're doing as a professional. And like I said, it does take time. I didn't understand how the relationships between anchors and producers should be, or how an anchor should maybe guide a reporter, or is that even a role that you should take, or if you're not an experienced anchor, what should be your role? You know what I mean? And I think that all deals with corporate culture, right? What is the culture inside that newsroom or that space? Or, and hopefully it's a good culture. Hopefully it's a culture that makes people feel wanted. And, I've been to some newsrooms where it sucks to go to work, and it just, you don't feel, not liked, but you don't feel like your work matters. And for anybody you don't want to be in that position. You know what I mean? So you want to find a space that's not toxic for you. And that can be anywhere. I see it inherently in this business because it's entertainment in some sense, because of the way that people are focused on looks and all of these features. And unfortunately, it brings out the worst in people. So I had to kind of understand that that's not everywhere or every newsroom or every person. And then to go above and beyond, and then to figure out, hey, listen, I'm not going to let, whatever happened or this situation detract from who I am. And I can continue on and learn from that and then be better, right? And change the culture in a way, now that I've been here for 4 years, in a way that, hey, listen, we're not going to answer like that, or we're going to lead somebody this way. We're not going to just let them, out to dry. And so I think here at Five, I've been allowed to grow into who I am. They've allowed me to be who I am, and that's huge, especially in media where everybody's discounting everything you say, every fact that comes out of your mouth. You know what I mean? So it's, and that's the job. That's the job. And obviously I knew that, and we know that, but you don't know it until you actually live it. And so I had to learn about those relationships, about the way things work. And that's just professional life. You don't really, I don't know if, I know I wasn't really taught that. But you just learn by doing, so I hope that kind of answers that question. But yeah, it was a learning process for me. So, yeah. And I think it will be for anybody,
Yeah, I think work culture, it can be powerful in positive and negative ways.
Yes.
Especially for us in higher ed, politics gets into it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So it does take some skill, it takes some time to kind of maneuver that, and it does take the experience of seeing what those different environments look like. And I think just even going in, just having the open mind that all work environments aren't, built the same. They all have their own different sets of histories, different makeup of the people that make it up, and that can have probably changed over time too. So keeping those things in mind on top of just doing your job, I think is kind of where those two meet. And it can get difficult, but I'm glad that you're able to explain, especially in your industry, that there are those little nuances to become a better professional, and then also just to kind of maneuver and try to get through that culture and find that really sweet spot. And it may be different for everybody, especially kind of depends on your upbringing, your belief system, and all
Right.
that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, man. It all comes down to your experiences. I think anybody and everybody can only make decisions based off the things that they have experienced, unfortunately. And if you haven't experienced anything outside of that, you either can't speak to it or shouldn't speak to it, or you know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, now let's get into your experience. You can, if it's been different in different areas, you can speak to that. But just your, perspective as being a Black man on camera. Presenting the news, doing the reporting. What has that been like? And maybe some of the nuances that come with that type of profile. Could you speak to that?
It's been tough. I mean, obviously, we see all the killings. I mean, from Trayvon Martin, I've been reporting on Black men and women dying since then. And watching it over and over, day in, day out on social media. It's been hard, and I don't know if the right word is traumatizing, because I don't think that's fair. I have not been impacted by the violence that these families have unfortunately been impacted by, but I think it does, shape your thinking. And unfortunately, because we are a non-biased source, and we are supposed to be that, you cannot have certain comments or certain ideas or thoughts that can't be said on social media, can't be said out in the public. Sometimes you can only think those things, right? And so those situations have happened. And I've felt emotionally torn when I've seen the death of Sandra Bland, of course, George Floyd. Sam Dubose was killed here in Cincinnati. I wasn't here for that, but I was here for the second trial of the UC officer who was put on the stand again. And you're a professional. You're paid to not give people your opinion. You're paid to give them the facts. But it has been very tough this year, specifically to look at all of the protests and all of the things, and unfortunately have to stay on the sideline in some sense and just report. But that's our job. And if I can't do that, I need to do something else, because it's not my job to be a Stephen A. Smith. It's not my job to be some of these commentators and other things that are paid to give their opinion, And so I think you have to know your lane. And I've had to, I don't know the right words for it, but I've had to calm and just shut down some of the feelings that I guess that I've had about it, because you have to detach yourself personally, and that's hard, especially being a father. It is hard to do that, but unfortunately that's society, and that's where we are. So, but I don't dismiss the fact that when people see me, they probably think one way or the other. And so, because of that, I use my outside resources to get involved in the community to help underserved. I do that because I feel like these kids need not only mentors, but they need the educational lessons that their parents can't give them right now, whether it be because they're working their tails off, or, there's so many other different options and issues happening, especially in Black America. And so I think if there can be a wave or a momentum or an initiative that helps get kids thinking outside the box and thinking, hey, listen, this might be your reality now, but you don't have to live here. You don't have to live this way your entire life. There is a route and a way. And it's not just if you work hard and a pat on the back, you can do it. It's more than that. Yeah. And so I found that by going out, starting a couple nonprofits, finding committees of people that want to give money and help and give entrepreneurship ideas to young Black Americans is the way that I can proliferate that emotion out of me, and keep it, keep everything calm. And so it's been great that I'm able to do that. I talked about the gym, obviously, and I'm kind of a single father. Like I said, my children live with their mom down in Louisville. So when I don't have them, I want to put time into other children, why not? So for me, that's my answer,
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you for providing that perspective, because it can be difficult to have to be that sponge, for the sake of your job and your professionalism and the growth that you want to have, while still kind of being that influence, that, that person that, another Black kid can see and say, hey, I can probably do this. I see Colin, doing his thing up there. But yeah, that's got to be tough to have those really, those feelings and having to bottle them up for a majority of your day. I'm glad that you have found other ways, those different initiatives where you can have positive impact on other, Black boys and girls, with the experiences that you have. And before getting into that, I want to, get into some of the other ways that you have, practiced self-care with having that burden, in some cases. So you talked about the working out, you talked about, just simply spending time with your kids. What other things that that you do to kind of make sure that you're maintaining yourself and your well-being so that you can, do your job for those really, positive times and sometimes those difficult times? What other things do you do?
Yeah. I think it's a couple different things. I have coaches and people that I bounce stuff off of, trusted, male companions that that are older than me, some of which have been through a lot of different experiences that I have not been through. A lot of that can help me bounce stuff off of them, give me a different perspective. Hey, I'm looking at it this way, but I need a different perspective of maybe why can't I get through this, or why can't I break through this? And I think having a different perspective from somebody else can really help your mental attitude. If you can see how your opponent or your enemy is thinking in some way, maybe you can figure out a way to beat them or figure out a result or an answer to that question. I think also taking care of yourself, eating and taking care of your body, as I've already talked about, is huge. I think, if you don't feel well, you can't do anything well. If your gut isn't good, and that's, people really don't take that seriously. But honestly, I didn't run track in college. I wasn't a college athlete, but I can tell you, I think my body is better now in my 30s than it ever has been. And that's because I focus 80% on my diet and only 20% on being in the gym. And I really think, obviously when you're in the gym, you go hard. But you also have to think about refueling your body is the most important thing. Yeah, you can be in the gym and pound out weights for 3 hours, but you're only putting in McDonald's and Chick-fil-A. You're not getting the nutrients that your body needs and the fiber to build those muscles back. And so I think just like that, you need that for your brain too, right? So I think mental health is a huge thing in my house. I think that you need a trusted individual to talk to, especially about some of the problems. And I know that that's hard for people to do. especially Black men. I know that that's not something that's taught culturally, because I feel like, without being said, we feel weak, or by showing emotion. I think that's the unwritten cultural thing. Even my father kind of embodies that mentality in some sense, but it's okay to have emotions, and to shield them, to hold them inside, only exacerbates the need for getting them out, and really only confuses and frustrates that individual. And then it does have a negative impact on relationships outside of that, with your wife, with your kids, because it just builds up. And so you have this frustration that's just welling up, and it's not being addressed. And so I think those three things are the core part of what you need. And obviously those probably aren't the only things. For me, those are the things that have worked. Obviously there's meditation, those type of things, but I don't really do that as much. I do pray. Unfortunately, the pandemic has made worship a lot different for a lot of different folks. But I think this year has been increasingly great, because I've been able to focus on my relationship with Christ, rather than having a church, in some sense, articulate to me about this relationship that I need to have, right? Like, I just have to have this now. It's not like I have to go to a place. It just is. So I think those things are the core. Not everybody obviously may not feel that, that's going to be that for them. But I think that being able to put resting your problems on Jesus, and putting it all on him is something that helps me as well. So those things, I think, for me, have been big.
Perfect. Yeah, the pandemic has definitely changed things as far as how we operate and everything.
Yeah.
But it has, brought out those opportunities, things where we're able to reconnect and kind of talk about these things. And, we're a little bit more creative with the ways that we kind of go about self-care, and, some of the cool things too. So definitely great how you articulated that. Now, before we wrap up, I do want you to kind of touch on some of those different initiatives, those nonprofits that you've created, and kind of what your goal is for those different opportunities.
Yeah, real quick on that. So I started in Louisville. I would go to these stories in the West End, and it's predominantly Black in the West End of Louisville. It's in the top 5 worst food deserts in America. And so I would do stories there about fresh food, produce, things like that, farm to table stuff. And these kids would know nothing about where this stuff came from. And it just blew my mind. I never thought that a kid, whether they be from an inner city place or even from rural, not knowing where it grows, how it comes, anything. Yeah. And so I knew the mayor at that time a little bit better than I thought. And I said, Mayor Fisher, you have all these plots of land. You guys are talking about over policing. How about this? What if you partner with Kroger? You already own these plots of land. And if you don't, maybe there's a partnership you can work out with the person that owns them, and create a community garden in certain places, so that you're involving the family, you're creating an educational component, right? And you're giving out fresh food and the things that these people need them. Get Kroger involved, right? I mean, they're a local grocery chain. They're one of the biggest in the nation. They love doing stuff on educational stuff on farm to table, all that type of produce and good nutrition for people. So I didn't get to see that idea through, but I do believe it ended up happening in some way, shape, or form. Fast forward 2 years, I was connected through a mutual friend to this nonprofit called Square One. And prior to that, I was starting my own foundation. And I was going to call it the Elevation Foundation. And the idea was, unlike where athletes have a lot of money, they put it in that foundation, they give back a lot of stuff. I didn't have that. So I was just kind of basically go off my name and my face and try to create this initiative for people to pour money into, so that we could either give it out, create scholarship funds. Well, that didn't really work. And so when I went to this, my friend now I work with, Keith Schneider, who runs Square One. He's like, great idea, but what about this? I run a nonprofit. We do after school programs. It's gaining traction here. We're doing entrepreneurship ideas. It's like Shark Tank. We pitch at the end of the year to angel investors, venture capital firms, entrepreneurs to enrich this ecosystem here in Cincinnati and keep kids educated here and keep them here. I thought, this is awesome. Not only could I get connections up the wazoo, right? Because we've got places like GE, we've got P&G headquartered here. I mean, this is one of the biggest cities for corporations, for headquartered corporations outside of like New York, Atlanta. Cincinnati has so many headquartered, huge multinational companies here that just made sense. So I got involved. And so now over the last 2 years, I've expanded our outreach in terms of collaboratively working with other nonprofits. A big partner of ours is Anthony Munoz. He's a Latin football player who was one of the best Cincinnati Bengals to ever play. Anthony's an amazing dude, and he does so much. He has a leadership and a number of other programs he does, but one of the big things is leadership programs. And he's in all the JCPS schools, which is over 80, I think over 100. And I said, Anthony, let's partner. Can I use your kids? Can I pitch to them? Vice versa, get our kids in your program, your kids in our program, maybe see if there's some funding that we can share. So I've been doing that over the last couple of months, last 2 years, finding collaborative steps so that we can get kids to know where they're at, who they are, what type of things that they like, get them involved in LinkedIn so we can track them, and then also create like committees for our program. So I have a number of entrepreneurs, a guy that actually sold his business on Shark Tank. He created Mensch. No, it was a Jewish toy based off of Elf on a Shelf, and he was able to create that. His name is Neil Hoffman, and Neil is from Cincinnati, so he's on the board. I've got guys from P&G that have done numerous marketing campaigns for nonprofits here that jumped off, started their own thing, came back on P&G, doing project management. So I've been able to wear a couple of different hats, as well as being in the classroom and teach personal branding, teach presentation skills, teach interviewing skills, social media management. And so I'm able to not only do that in the classroom, create curriculum and coursework, but also let people know that I do know how to manage individuals, create a committee, create a group of people, and that I can put the right people in place in the right room to get some things done. And for me, that was created to elevate our program. And so I want us to be in schools more than just after school. I wanted them to make us a part of the curriculum once a month, if possible. And basically what we do is, like I said, we take these kids from the idea, from their business, and flush it out, right? What does the market look like? How much money would it be to start this business? Who are your customer base? What does that look like? And then, like I said, all the way to the end to when they actually pitch their thought out idea or app. We had a kid who made a female ride sharing app last year, who's now in works with Apple and Google to try and grab some of those components that might go on another app. So, so that is what excites me about what I do in my day job, that helps me do other stuff. Because unfortunately, if I didn't have the job that I had, I don't know if anybody would really listen to me. If I wasn't, Colin Mayfield, anchor from Channel 5, I might just be another educator, or who knows, but I've found that because I have a platform because of this job, and I don't know why, I do know why, but it's in your best interest to utilize that in the best and positive way possible. And so for me, that's what I've really been trying to do. So that is my focus now, is other than, work, is expanding this Square One initiative called Next. And it's something I think that can not only live in Cincinnati, but I'm planning to take it and expand it to other cities at some point when I can and when I do go there. So I think it's really beneficial in teaching kids workforce development, getting them outside the classroom, getting them in enriching ideas, learning about that corporate culture, that I've been talking about, and how you move and work within that, especially when your whole environment doesn't look like that. How do you get there? What's the path look like? Because from what we say to how you get there, sometimes you just can't see it, so you have to give kids a way to touch it, to feel it, to see it, and then they think that they can do it, so that's the biggest part for me.
Yeah, it's very empowering. I like every part of that, and it's amazing what you can see, or how much you can see that they can learn and just really absorb and retain at that young age. So if you're putting these different concepts together that they're going to eventually use, maybe in high school and college, and eventually in their professional life, they already have that head start, or, in some cases, they're kind of now meeting up with their competition by that point. So, and then you're doing it in fun ways too, right? I'm sure that some of these kids, or a lot of these kids, are competitive. So they're going to really put their all, have some type of bragging rights when it comes to that. But at the same time that they're really learning these things, and maybe they won't know at that point. But they'll be like, oh, when I was working with Mr. Mayfield, this was something that he taught me, and I can't believe that I'm using it now. So that's really dope that you're doing that. And, definitely kudos to you. And, hopefully that, continues to expand as you see it. So before we close out, I want to get just like a couple, like your opinion, your preferences on some different things. I want to get your personal and professional opinion on these things. So the first one, in light of the pandemic, or actually just take out the pandemic, movies at home or going to the movie theater, what would you prefer?
Movies at home.
Movies at home. All right. Apple or Spotify?
Ooh, Apple.
Okay. All right. So you're at the cookout. What are you most likely doing? If we were to kind of catch a glimpse of Colin.
I'm grilling.
I'm grilling. Grilling.
I'm grilling. I know nobody. I don't let anybody near the grill, man. I'm grilling. If it's my backyard, I'm grilling.
That's your territory. Do you have the sandals and outfit to match?
Apron, the hat, all of it.
There you go. All right. Now, what are you playing? Are you playing spades or Uno?
Oh, Uno.
Okay. All right. Are you stacking or not stacking? Stacking. Okay. Now, a little bit more controversial. Are you putting twos on fours on twos? Are you taking it to that next level, or are you keeping it, twos on twos, fours on fours?
I'm keeping it twos on twos.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then last question, if your response to somebody is, I'm on my way, where are you?
Probably hadn't gotten in the car yet.
I appreciate you.
That's changed by years, man, because I was thinking about that today. I used to be so punctual. And I think as professionals, we started to get lenient on ourselves, because I don't know why, but we've acclaimed to this status where we can just roll in like a minute late, and it's like, you can't do that. Like, you know what I mean? You still need to stay on task, because people are still grabbing information about you when you're not on time. So
yeah. No, I would think it would be the other way around, where it's like, where you don't have those responsibilities. You're like, man, I'm on the way, and you're like getting out of bed, so so I totally get that, man. Well, man, that's all I got for you, man. Colin, this has been great. This has been very dope to kind of, learn about, your upbringing, where you are now. I truly appreciate your time. So before we do wrap up, if you have anything that you want to promote, the different organizations that you have, if any listeners want to reach out to you, I'm going to give you the time to lay that out.
Yeah, no shameless promotion, really. If you do want to watch, you can catch me on WLWT News 5 in Cincinnati. If you want to get a hold of me, however, do so. I have my Gmail. It's Colin, Colin D Mayfield, Mayfield, all lowercase together, at gmail.com. That's probably the best way to reach me. But if you guys want to help out, donate to Square One, please do. I think it's ideastartgrow.com is our website if you want to learn more on how you can help out, or maybe even help us get this process moving forward. So I appreciate it, Selvin, man.
No, thank you. Thank you. So, again, thanks for your time. Thank you for everybody who's listening, however you're consuming this podcast. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to it. You can follow us on the social media. We're at InQuire Hire on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we've got InQuireHire.com. You can check out what resources we have for you. We do specialize in college preparation. So if you do have any of those needs, no matter if you're a freshman or a senior trying to figure out where you want to go, we would love to be part of that journey with you. So you'll definitely, reach out to us so that we can help. So until next time, peace to you and enjoy the rest of your day.